Welcome to Al Pacino's Greatest Hits of 1997. No, that's really what I'm doing. So, I already wanted to do a video on Devil's Advocate, and which came out in 1997 and starred Al Pacino. And then I thought, well, I kind of want to watch Donnie Brasco again. So that's what I'm going to do this week. I'm doing Devil's Advocate, and then I'm doing Donnie Brasco. So the Wednesday update is Devil's Advocate, the Friday update is going to be Donnie Brasco.
A world of power and seduction.
Who's that with the senator?
Controlled by one man.
I swear he can hear us. Hell, he can smell us.
He will make your dreams come true.
Want to come upstairs and... Now?
He will grant your fondest wish.
I'm just warming my hands on your talent. You know what I see? I see the future of this law firm.
He knows your greatest fear.
Milton is into everything. Arms brokering, chemical weapons, toxic waste, money laundering for the Eastern Bloc. I mean, it goes on and on.
I don't like it here, Kevin.
And he knows the price of your soul.
Trying to get better at this, so like, share, subscribe. I keep forgetting to do that. But let's talk about Devil's Advocate. So this is an interesting movie. It's a movie that is kind of a milestone in Al Pacino's career. It's one of the better known movies of the 1990s, but it's not quite a classic. And I've always thought this was a good, not great movie. You know, it was like an A-, not an A+. And rewatching it recently, I finally was kind of able to put my finger on what the issue with it is. And it's that this is a movie where the director and the screenwriter aren't in agreement on the genre of film they are making. So, this movie had kind of a troubled path to the big screen. It was based on a novel written by Andrew Neiderman, and Andrew Neiderman's only had one other book adapted into a film. It was called The Maddening, which was a horror flick that starred Burt Reynolds. It was okay. But he pitched this to studios in the early 90s, and originally Joel Schumacher, who did Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Falling Down, all that, was interested in adapting it with Brad Pitt starring. But Al Pacino, who was the choice to play John Milton even then, didn't like the script. They couldn't really come to a conclusion on who should play Milton instead, and the project just kind of died. Then came Taylor Hackford. Taylor Hackford was coming off of a hit with the Stephen King adaptation, Dolores Claiborne, which is a good movie. It stars Kathy Bates and Jennifer Jason Leigh. The book was good too. And he kind of repurposed it. Apparently, he repitched it as being something to be made right after the O.J. Simpson trial. These big court cases. People were very down on lawyers after the O.J. Simpson trial because the O.J. Simpson trial really kind of pulled back the curtain for the American public and said, if you have enough money, you can get a lawyer that can get you off almost no matter what. You know, there was such a mountain of evidence against O.J. Simpson, and he still got off because he was rich as hell, and he spent a lot of money on a legal team that would basically just get him out of jail. And Devil's Advocate is not a close adaptation of the book. I read the book a long time ago, and the main thing I remember is that it's nothing like the movie. Even some of the names are changed. But it's about a small-town Florida lawyer, played by Keanu Reeves, who is on an incredible winning streak as a defense attorney. And it gets the notice of a major law firm up in New York City, ran by Al Pacino's character, John Milton. And they invite him to come to NYC and just kind of, you know, try it out, just see how things go. He immediately continues his winning streak. He does very well on his first couple cases, and they hire him on. And he brings his wife, played by Charlize Theron, along with him. So I'm just going to say up front that this includes some career best work from Al Pacino, from Charlize Theron, and from Keanu Reeves. All three are fantastic. Now, some people have complained about Keanu Reeves' accent in this movie, but as someone who grew up in the South, yeah, it's a really thick accent, but I have met people that sound like him. So I can't even impersonate it, but the way he's talking in this movie is, there are people in the South that talk like this. So, with the Keanu Reeves is playing Kevin Lomax, and Kevin is this kind of fast-talking, smooth. It's a very different role for Keanu Reeves. It's very, very, very different. It was apparently he turned down Speed 2 to do this movie because he had just done Chain Reaction and didn't want to do another action movie, and he would have gotten paid a lot more to do Speed 2, but Speed 2 sucked, and Devil's Advocate is kind of a cult classic, so he made the right decision. It was also a good opportunity for him to show people that he can really act. Now, Keanu Reeves absolutely can act. He does have this kind of default action movie persona, but when he tries, he can act. You look at A Scanner Darkly, you look at The Gift, The Watcher. Like, I have seen him give some great performances before, and this is a really, really good piece of acting here. And Charlize Theron also. This was a very early role for her. She was only 21 when this movie was being made, which is kind of funny because that scene in there where they're in the bar, she was only like that legal by that much to be even be able to drink in this country. She's from Africa, but she was just coming off of 2 days in the valley. She had turned down Showgirls. Good for her. So this was kind of her big breakthrough as a major name in Hollywood. And of course, Al Pacino was kind of the guy that the whole movie was built around. He was a legend of acting then. He was he had just won an Oscar a few years earlier for Sin of a Woman. And Pacino owns this movie. He is having the time of his life playing this John Milton character. Of course, the name John Milton comes from the author of Paradise Lost, the legendary poem, but which is about the descent of the devil. And the John Milton character is spending the entire movie kind of trying to bring Kevin Lomax into the fold. He wants him to be part of this high power law firm that he runs. So with Kevin Lomax, he's a guy you get the impression is just a winner. He's very, very ambitious to a fault. And his wife isn't. She would be perfectly happy to have stayed in their small Florida town, and she's just kind of trying to be supportive of him, but right off the bat, she realizes she's not happy. That with this kind of six-figure job, I mean, this is a high-power, prestigious law firm, she's not going to see much of her husband. She's basically just going to be hanging out in a massive apartment with a bunch of rich bitches. She doesn't really take to her neighbors, and she's unhappy, and he's not really that concerned about it. It's like, here's a ton of money, here's a nice place to live, leave me alone, all right, I'm working. That's kind of the approach he takes, and he's got John Milton kind of as the devil on his shoulder, figuratively, showing him how you can have this awesome New York nightlife. Like, you can go party, you can go bang beautiful women, you can wear nice clothes, you can just do whatever you want, essentially. And he gets his first major case. He does jury selection on one case, but then he does a major case defending Delroy Lindo. Now, Delroy Lindo is an awesome actor. I love him. He starred in one of my favorite movies from the 90s, Clockers, the Spike Lee movie. But he's been in other things. He was in that David Mamet movie, Heist. He's in Broken Arrow, the John Woo flick with John Travolta. So Delroy Lindo's really cool. He's only in the movie for a couple scenes. It's kind of an extended cameo, but he's this weird voodoo priest guy, but he's rich. And then they get into the major case, the meat of the film, which is this real estate tycoon played by Craig T. Nelson, the TV star. Craig T. Nelson's been in a lot of shows. I think he was on a show called The Unit. He was on a sitcom called Coach, and probably some other stuff that I haven't seen. But he was this rich asshole real estate mogul that is clearly patterned after Donald Trump, even to the point where his penthouse is Trump's penthouse in New York City. Apparently Donald Trump didn't mind. I'm astonished Donald Trump didn't have a cameo in this movie. They even mentioned him in the movie at one point. But Craig T. Nelson is this rich guy who is accused of murdering his wife and her kid, and I believe also a maid. And he hires, the best defense money can buy, and that's John Milton. And John Milton recommends Kevin for this specific job. This is a massive, high, prestigious case. I mean, if you imagine a guy like that, a guy who's as rich and notorious as that, going on trial for a triple homicide, it would be a huge deal. And Kevin knows that this is the opportunity not just to propel his career, but also to propel his fame. He really is starting to enjoy getting his face in the papers, like getting to do press conferences and that kind of thing. All the while, his wife is just getting worse and worse. She's starting to have a legitimate full-blown nervous breakdown. On top of that, Kevin becomes increasingly aware that there's some kind of dirty dealings in the law firm. He walks in on one of the basically John Milton's number two guy, played by Jeffrey Jones, just shredding a ton of paperwork. They're apparently under investigation by the feds. They've got their fingers in a lot of arms dealing, weapons development, that kind of thing. So through all of this, it feels like this script was written to be kind of a dark legal thriller. That's how it feels. It feels like when the author, the person who adapted this novel to the screen, was kind of thinking that this would be something along the lines of The Firm, if you remember that Tom Cruise legal film. But the issue is that Taylor Hackford obviously wanted this to be a horror movie. It's shot like a horror movie, it's edited like a horror movie, it's scored like a horror movie. There's never any doubt in your mind, really, that there's something supernatural going on. And the problem with that is that you're really way ahead. The audience is way ahead of the lead character, Keanu Reeves, Kevin Lomax. We're just kind of waiting for him to finally figure out that, yeah, something's really wrong with this place. This is not normal. There's a supernatural element to what's happening. And because of that, for a movie that's north of 2 hours, it feels like you're just kind of waiting for something to happen. Now, not to say that this is a boring movie, it's not, but it is a movie that's paced out kind of weird and is longer than it really should be. It also has a weird framing device where at the beginning of the movie, it starts with Kevin Lomax in a small southern town defending a teacher played by Chris Bauer. And Chris Bauer was on the TV show True Blood, the R-rated version of Twilight is how I always think of that show. But he was also the villain, Machine, the guy in the leather mask in that awesome Nicolas Cage movie, 8mm, the one where he's investigating the stuff film. So you get it's him in this defending this teacher who's accused of molesting a student played by Heather Matarazzo from Welcome to the Dollhouse and Hostel Part 2. And he essentially is positive this guy's guilty. There's no doubt in his mind. But, a defense attorney isn't supposed to consider guilt or innocence. They're just supposed to give the best defense possible. But they're also not supposed to put people on the stand that they know are going to lie. So it's this weird kind of balancing act on how they're supposed to behave. But, and apparently I've read that defense attorneys like to just assume that all their clients are guilty because it kind of helps alleviate stress for them. They aren't worried about an innocent person going to jail. So I don't know how true that is, but I read that one time. That it was Michael Connolly, the writer of The Lincoln Lawyer, the book, and then that was adapted in the movie with Matthew McConaughey, said that in researching that story, he said that all defense attorneys like to think of their clients as just guilty. So it starts out with him defending this obviously guilty pedophile teacher, and it has this moment where he kind of has to stop and think, am I really okay with, because he's pretty sure he can win, he's got to stop and think, like, am I really okay with turning this fat bastard out on the world again? And later in the movie, he learns that the guy was arrested with the body of a young girl in his trunk. So yeah, he caused that. I mean, he absolutely did. He put this guy back out on the street. He helped get him free. It was his job. And you could say that the argument would be that the prosecutor didn't do his job. So is it the defense attorney's job? Is it the prosecutor's job? It's weird. And it's an interesting moral question. And the idea of doing this sort of what Taylor Hackford described as a Faustian story, where you have to decide if you're willing to make a deal with the devil or not, is something about a defense attorney. Because we need defense attorneys. Innocent people get arrested all the time. But at the same time, how do you decide that? Like, does a defense attorney assume that his client is guilty? Like, when he's defending Craig T. Nelson's character, he pretty much figures out that the guy's guilty. It turns out that the Craig T. Nelson character is infatuated with his stepdaughter, played by Monica Keena, the girl from Entourage. She was the love interest in the main character on that HBO show Entourage, and she starred in Freddy vs. Jason, or should I say her breast starred in Freddy vs. Jason, because the director was like shooting it down her shirt half the movie, but not complaining. But he's infatuated with his stepdaughter, so he wanted to get his wife out of the way, which is pretty harsh. But do you want to put this guy back out on the street? Can you? But it's not like he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt, but he's pretty damn sure. So, it's a major moral conundrum. But while all of that's going on, you're getting really overt horror movie stuff too. Charlize Theron's character starts to have this full-on mental breakdown, starts as nightmares, but then she just starts straight up hallucinating. She's seeing monsters and some not good digital effects. The digital effects in this movie are probably the only real glaring problem with the movie is that the digital effects are just terrible. This is mid-90s CGI. They just shouldn't have done it. But, she's seeing monsters. At one point, a character is beaten to death by these old homeless men who just, their faces start to turn into, monster faces. So, it's just that you always know that you're watching a horror flick. It would be like if Rosemary's Baby tried to pretend that it wasn't about the occult. It's just a strange thing that the movie's doing. And the movie's trailer, which is playing behind me, is very spoiler heavy because so much of what's in the trailer is actually from the movie's, legendary climax, where Al Pacino just flat out is saying, yes, I am the devil. And what is it? Keanu Reeves says, what are you, Lucifer? He says, yeah. I'm going to avoid heavy spoilers, but so yeah, John Milton's the devil, and he gives this whole speech about how God set the table against man. That he's trying to tempt Kevin Lomax, and that's what the whole movie essentially is about. Is John Milton trying to tempt Keanu Reeves' character, Kevin Lomax, and he's trying to do him by offering him everything he could ever want: the money, the power, the women. He keeps trying to get him to cheat on his wife, and as it goes on, yeah, like I said, I wish the reveal that John Milton is the devil had come about 45 minutes earlier than it does. Like, we don't need to still be pretending that we don't know that something's off about this guy. You wouldn't even necessarily need to change anything about Kevin's perception of him to just go ahead and have it flat out said. Yes, John Milton is the devil. I mean, it's in the title, Devil's Advocate, which is another part of where I say that I think the screenwriter just meant in the old colloquial sense, that the saying, the devil's advocate, meaning you're just speaking for someone without necessarily agreeing with them, and they're probably wrong, which is kind of what a defense attorney is doing. They're just saying, my client said that he didn't kill them, and here's why I think he might be right. But yeah, in the movie, it's obvious, clear, devil's advocate. He's working for the devil. There are so many signs, even right from the start, that that John Milton is the devil, like the weird raised shoes that he's wearing and crap. Yeah, so all right, I'm going to get into spoilers from here on out. So it is a good movie. It's a movie that you should definitely see. It's not too dated. It's great acting, especially fans of Keanu Reeves. I know Keanu Reeves has been making a big resurgence in the last few years because of the John Wick movies. But and it's fantastic acting from him. It's great acting from Al Pacino. It's some of the most intense, over-the-top stuff Pacino's ever done, and from a guy that goes as like Heat, great ass, like it for a guy that goes as big as he does. That's saying something. He's awesome in this movie, and Charlize Theron is fantastic. It's amazing that she's as young as she is in this movie because she brings maturity and range a lot. Like, this is not a throwaway wife role by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of these movies, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, the wife was like just someone there for to stand behind the husband, and then they'd usually get kidnapped or some crap later in the movie. She has a full arch, and it's a fantastic performance. I mean, she is being driven insane by what she's seeing, by the circumstance she finds herself in. And Charlize Theron, I would honestly say that, like, I'd put this right up there with Monsters, absolutely some of her best work. And, yeah, so go watch it, and heavy spoilers. So, the big reveal is that Al Pacino is Keanu Reeves' father. That he orchestrated this entire thing because he's trying to have Keanu Reeves be kind of at his side, and he wants to produce the Antichrist. And again, I think that this should have been revealed way earlier in the movie. If they were going to make it a horror movie, then we should have known that John Milton wanted to get Kevin Lomax to beget the Antichrist with his half-sister, which is played by Connie Nielsen. Connie Nielsen, who's done a ton of TV work, probably best known for 1 Hour Photo, the Robin Williams thriller where Robin Williams is a psycho running at a photo chem lab, and the Gladiator. She was Russell Crowe's love interest in Gladiator. But she is, I mean, good God, her nude scene in this movie is one of the greatest nude scenes in all time. Like, I saw this when I was a little kid, and like my eyes just bugged out of my head. Like, holy hell! This has a lot of sex in it, by the way, as you can see by the people taking off their clothes behind me. But there's a lot of sex. You even see Keanu Reeves' gooch. But he's trying to beget the Antichrist. See, I feel like for the movie they made, this reveal needed to come way earlier, because so much of this is just waiting, and you're just waiting and waiting, and then that thing at the end where Keanu Reeves realizes he's been hallucinating the whole time. That's something you're either going to go through with or you're not. Like I said, it's a framing device that it takes him back to the courtroom in the beginning defending the pedophile teacher, and he kind of had to decide whether he was willing to actually get this guy out of jail or not. Like I said, that's something you're either going to roll with or you're not. And the fact that at least it's not like it was all a dream, that John Milton does exist, that Al Pacino is real, because that would have honestly just kind of ruined the movie. Everybody hates it was all a dream. It's like it was all a play or something. No one likes that. And my interpretation of that has always been that John Milton was playing it like a chess game in Keanu Reeves' head. Well, if I did this, what would he do? If I did this, what would he do? If I did this, what would he do? And it ultimately failed, so he didn't do it. In the scenario that he envisions, it ultimately ends with Keanu Reeves, Kevin Lomax, killing himself, destroying John Milton's plans. And John Milton, apparently, if he fails to beget the Antichrist, he would be sent back to heaven, which, okay, I'm not really sure why, but And it morphs into a young version. Apparently that was supposed to look like a young Al Pacino, but to me it always just looked like Keanu Reeves when John Milton is turned back into an angel because Lucifer is supposed to be the most beautiful of all angels. And I always just thought that looked like Keanu Reeves, but supposedly it was supposed to look like young Al Pacino. I don't know. But anyway, that was kind of, and if you're saying, well, you read the book, you should know what happened in the ending. No, because the book doesn't end like that. The book is so different. I mean, first off, I mean, just even like in minor differences, the teacher's a woman instead of a man. The teacher's a woman and molested a female student instead of a man that did. But even beyond that, the wife is completely different. She's exactly the opposite of the way the wife is presented in the movie. The wife is loving like she's, I'm rich, I get nice things, yay. She don't give a damn, and and then John Milton is not Kevin Lomax's father. That's different. Kevin Lomax goes to a priest who tells him he has to kill John Milton to stop the devil, and he goes and kills John Milton, stabs him, and then he goes to jail for it. And then it turns out that he's being sent to jail to act as a defense attorney for all these people in prison. He's been sent there by John Milton. This was all his plan to look into all these cases and get all these criminals out. And that's how the book ended. So the book ends completely differently. And Andrew Needham also wrote a prequel to the book called Judgment Day that about 6 years ago, which I have not read. And he tried to get that turned into a TV show, which didn't get off the ground. But yeah, I think this is a good movie. I do. I like it. Like I said, it's flawed, and it's frustratingly flawed because this should be an A+. Like it has all the ingredients. It's just that things aren't quite clicking into place right. They're not quite clicking into place right. Like I mean, good lord, the scene where Keanu Reeves sees his wife commit suicide is some of the best acting I've ever seen out of anyone. I mean, he sells it so well that anyone who would ever argue Keanu Reeves can't act, I say watch the scene where he sees his wife commit suicide and tell me that's not a man who has just seen the love of his life die. Like, it is fantastic acting. And you could argue that Pacino's overacting, but I think the role calls for it. I think the fact that he's consistent, he's able to sell it is cool. So I like it. There's some little trivia stuff about this movie here and there. There was a big lawsuit about this movie because of the sculpture in John Milton's personal penthouse or whatever it was. That big thing with all the people in it, the stone sculpture behind his desk. Some artists said that it looked too much like his work and sued, and they ended up having to digitally alter it a little bit. So it was originally supposed to be the people in the sculpture the whole time instead of just at the end of the movie, but this artist sued, and I've seen the original sculpture. They don't look that much alike. The artist was just being a dick, probably trying to get publicity for himself. The bit where Don King, the infamous fight promoter, shows up at the boxing match, apparently he didn't know they were filming. He just came up and started talking to Al Pacino, and Pacino just kind of rolled with it, and they were able to use it in the movie. What else do I know about this movie? I think that's about all I got. I love the use of Rolling Stones painted black at the end. I think that's a perfect way to end this movie. I love that song. That's a great finale. And yeah, I think that's about all I got. Yeah, so I'm done with Devil's Advocate. Next update will be Friday, and I will be doing Donnie Brasco, also starring Al Pacino with the Johnny Depp Al Pacino mob movie, the Undercover Cop movie. Oh, got it.